Good morning, everyone. Lots going on. As usual, today is Friday, November 28th, 2025, and it's Black Friday. So if you probably knew that already, but if you didn't know that, you should get your Christmas presents started, Christmas shopping started. Ukraine government is not legit, says Russia, and they say the lack of elections is compromising the ability for Zelensky and his team to be in charge of the post-war anything. And so I think that that's an interesting argument. And Russia, again, we get told all the time Russia's terrible and they're so bad and they're this and they're that. They're interfering in our elections and stuff. But I see Canada interfering in the United States elections all the time. And Trump interfering in Canadian elections, and people are fine with that. And there's all sorts, and not only fine with Canada interfering in the United States elections. Dominion is a voting machine thing from Canada that has really done a number on U.S. elections. Nobody seems upset about any of that. So like, we're supposed to hate Russia, but they come up with and say things that I think, yeah, that makes rational sense. Like, that seems pretty. Yeah, I agree, right? So it's very, very interesting when we get told, "Oh yeah, those people are terrible." Meanwhile, the hypocrisy is up to 11, right? It's crazy. Fake food from China. They've got whole factories that are making fake food that you can eat, but will just make you sick, I guess. I don't have all of the details. I just thought it was really, really wild. In that same vein, baby formula has skyrocketed by 84%, they say, and today's top story, well, we've got to talk about Mark Carney, and we're going to talk about Mark Carney and his conflict of interest and the scheme or the scam that this guy talks about, not this guy talks about, with regards to de-risking the global green market. And they're doing it with Canadian tax dollars and Mark Carney. And I think that it's just kind of the plan, they're doing up the blueprints, right, for other people in other positions like Mark Carney to follow those blueprints to extract wealth from their host countries like a parasite. And so this is 10 minutes. If you haven't watched this, you should go and watch this. At the end of this video, and this is buried in the second series of tabs, but BC Barracuda shares this video, and I don't know who this actually is. I don't know who this influencer guy is, but he explains how Mark Carney is using Social Security and pension funds to de-risk the green economy, basically using Canadian tax dollars and pension funds that are supposed to not be able to go into these risky investments, but are made able to. And he explains how in this video. But then the part I'm going to show you, he talks about how this is a scam and we're going to be left holding the bag, basically. So at the end of this video, I came out thinking, we've been robbed and we're being robbed. And I think that. I genuinely think that. I think that we're spending tax dollars. Those tax dollars are going to foreign countries, foreign wars that I don't agree with, all sorts of different things. We're told stories. There's no accountability. So I do believe that there's an element of darkness to the government and how they operate, and there's zero transparency, and we're told it's for our safety, comrade. But I don't think I believe that much. And now I'm realizing that the scam is much more sophisticated, and they don't want just my money. They want my money, my kids' money, their kids' money, all the way down. And it's jaw-dropping. So like, I knew we were being robbed, but I didn't know it was this level. And so it's absolutely bonkers. So, but first, we have to get to the pipeline, because the pipeline is another big news. And I don't think it's ever going to happen. And other people seem to think it's going to happen. There are lots of people saying, congratulations, Danielle Smith. It might happen. They might push this through despite EVs being upset, blah, 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 blah. But I think it's going to get tied up in court for years. And I think Carney knows it. And he's playing people in order to move forward with all of this. And while we talk about a pipeline, they're going to get their censorship bill passed. And we're going to get screwed on both. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. Food professor says, this is pipeline related, trust me. Former Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault is out of cabinet. He channeled millions of dollars through the Smart Prosperity, or he's channeled millions through the Smart Prosperity Institute and the Canadian Climate Institute to academics who echoed the government's narrative that the carbon tax was a flawless policy. Good riddance. Yeah. Yes, good riddance. And to confirm it, here's Stephen Guilbeault himself on X. He says, this afternoon, I informed the Prime Minister of my decision to resign as Minister of Canadian Identity and Culture, Minister responsible for official languages, Minister of Nature and Parks Canada, as well as his lieutenant in Quebec. So he gets off scot-free for all the stuff he did in Jasper, all the lack of doing anything preventative backburns, nothing. He hasn't done anything. He caused more harm than he helped, and he's walking away just scot-free and claiming the moral high ground because how dare you build a pipeline in Canada? Bye-bye. Bye-bye. See you later. Dean says climate radical CN Tower scaling orange jumpsuit wearing Minister Stephen Guilbeault quits cabinet. Good riddance. Yeah, I can't say that I'm sad. And Chris says, I see that Stephen Guilbeault is resigning from cabinet. A reminder that the guy still needs to be investigated thoroughly. Western Standard is reporting years ago now, 2024, just 1 year, almost two. Guilbeault accused of siphoning $254 million to his own company. Isn't it for bicycles or something like that? Is there any connection to Brookfield? Is the bicycle shop downstairs and Brookfield's upstairs? Gov.exe says Elizabeth May, 2 weeks ago, I'm voting yes on Budget 25 because I believe the Liberals have a climate plan. Elizabeth May today, I'm appalled and disgusted by this Liberal government's anti-climate plan. Wah wah. You prop them up, stupid. You can't complain about the mess you helped create. Everybody knew this was going to happen. And this is all kabuki theater. These people are mad because they're putting on a big show. To make it seem like they're actually going to push this pipeline through, but I genuinely don't think they're going to push this pipeline through. I think that they're captured ideologues who are using climate and this whole thing as another layer of control, and they can play it like a guitar string, right? Like they can pluck it hard or soft, and when they want to punish, they can pluck it hard. But if they want to, build a pipeline, they can pluck it soft. And we are the ones who end up holding the bag. And these people, right, Elizabeth May and everybody else, they go to different events and claim this position and that position, but they're not any different positions. They're all the same position. It's bullshit. They're screwing us, and they know it. They know it. Here's Franco Tetrasino. He says a carbon tax hike is buried in the federal Alberta Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU. A carbon tax on businesses will increase to $130 a ton. 130, that's a huge amount. It means more than a 6-time increase in the industrial price on carbon from its effective level, says Carney. So here's 26 seconds of Carney talking about this.
But at its core is tightening the tier system, which is the industrial carbon price system here in Alberta, to a level of at least $130 with a pass price from there. What does that mean? It means more than a 6 times increase in the industrial price of carbon, from its effective level, which is much lower than the headline level, the effective level, to the level that's committed in the agreement. But at
a 6-time increase. So we want to crush business at the industrial level 6 times harder than we currently are. Yay? Like, what do you want me to say about this? Here is Ryan. He says, listen to what Carney's saying. Darn, I had it all lined up. at the end. He's talking
and
about...
also just on the point of cooperation.
He's talking about building this pipeline, and Ryan says, what are the odds this pipeline actually gets built? Mark Carney just goes on and on and on, and drones and drones and drones, talking about different threads and, people talking about First Nations consultation and EB and BC consultation. Smith says she doesn't see a veto in the Memorandum of Understanding. So yes, we have to negotiate with BC, but they have to come to the table. They don't have a veto. But I think that that's exactly what they have, right? Like they seem to have a veto. It's not a zero-sum game where Danielle Smith holds all the cards and the pipeline, and Dave Eby's expected to acquiesce to her request, right? Here's Melissa, and she's talking about, this is not in the right spot. Oops. We'll move it. It's the Shopify CEO stuff. We'll put it at the end of pipeline. We'll put it in government. Here is Danielle Smith. I just want to make sure I didn't. Yeah, okay. Here's Mario, and I thought this was funny. All of the influencers are excited about this pipeline. They're not looking at this critically. They're not looking at history. The last 15 years of 20 years. How long have we been trying to build a pipeline? Trying to build this thing, and it doesn't generally get built without a lot of nonsense, right? And so Mario says, breaking huge victory for Danielle Smith. No more emissions cap. We get pipelines. BC and EB get zero veto power. Tankers on BC coast are no longer forbidden. A monster new pipeline is coming, 1 million barrels a day. TMX is going to be allowed to pump out another 400,000 barrels a day. Everyone in Canada should be thanking her leadership. No, thank you. Thanking her leadership for nothing. These people are... manipulating the crap out of us at the very least. Nico says, did you even listen to the press conference? The memorandum of understanding is non-binding. BC and tribes have the power to refuse a pipeline. She will bring back an industrial carbon tax on April 1st. She promoted the carbon capture, excuse me. She even said she trusted Mark Carney. Yowza. Here is Danielle Smith, and she's talking about all of this. CPAC says, Alberta's Danielle Smith explains how her new pipeline agreement goes hand in hand with carbon reduction. And here we go.
I want to begin with a comment that you made in your news conference, that this MOU essentially gives Alberta the opportunity to show the world that the solution for reducing emissions is not about capping production. There will be, people who hear that and be a bit skeptical. So walk us through how this agreement, which does include prioritizing a new pipeline, go hand in hand with carbon reduction.
Well, I can tell you that we've had a good group of companies. They call themselves the Pathways Alliance. There are 6 largest oil sands producers. And several years ago, they charted out a pathway to become carbon neutral by 2050. Part of it is carbon capture, utilization, and storage. Part of it is building interties with other provinces so that we can bring in hydropower or nuclear power. And part of it is direct air capture. And we've got 10 demonstration projects going on right now in central Alberta. But we all knew that you need enough time horizon for some of those technologies to be implemented at scale so that they can start working. And that's part of the problem that we had with the approach the federal government was taking. They were just trying to move too far, too fast, which would have resulted in our production being shut in. Now, with the agreement that we have today, I think we're going to be able to develop technology that will not only be a market on its own to export to the world, but will also be able to continue producing the heavy oil that we have that is sought after around the world.
She seems very optimistic. This is a video from John Bolton, and somebody sent it to me yesterday. And he starts the video saying, I said that this is going to be bullshit, and it's bullshit. And he goes through up and down why it's bullshit. And he says, here is Sheila Gunn Reid asking questions of Danielle Smith. And this is where she says, I don't see a veto in this. Here we go.
Now, after he left the signing with you, his press release says these projects will only be built in consultation and partnership with Indigenous rights holders and British Columbia. So what is the real strength of this MOU when you have a partner who keeps giving veto to British Columbia?
Well, you'll see in the agreement there's no mention of veto. I think that there obviously has to be trilateral discussions with British Columbia to find areas of common ground, and I think we will. And there's also clearly going to have to be a formal consultation process with Indigenous bands, and we're prepared to do all of that.
To me, it looked like Danielle Smith was a deer in the headlights answering that question. And when I was watching her,
he had a good analysis. I enjoyed this show. So thanks for sharing that. I think it was in the Canada Poly chat, but I could be wrong about that. Somebody may have emailed it to me. Theo says, Danielle Smith is one of them. We call them globalists. CBC Watcher has Ezra Levent asking Danielle Smith about carbon taxation starting in April. And the problem here is that carbon taxation starts in April, but the pipeline is not around for 30 years or 15 years at least, right? So
the duty is on Alberta to jack up carbon taxes. And the last date in the MOU, if I'm reading it right, correct me if I'm not, is 2040. That's when this pipeline, that's sort of the end date. It can't be any later than that. In terms of building trust with the anti-oil liberals, they're asking Alberta to raise carbon taxes now for a promise of an oil pipeline years or even more than a decade in the future. Does that really build trust?
Well, you have to start somewhere. And one thing I would say is that we did have the Supreme Court of Canada rule on the federal government's ability to set a price on emissions. So the Supreme Court has ruled on that. It's part of the reason why we negotiated a stringency agreement that would have seen the carbon tax price go up to $170 a barrel by 2030. We've demonstrated, and I think the Prime Minister agrees, that's too high, too fast. So that's why we understand that there was always going to be a negotiation around that. We froze the carbon tax at $95, pending consultation with the industry and greater work with the Prime Minister. But remember, Alberta was the first to have an industrial carbon price. They did we implemented that in 2007. It's just...
Who was in charge in 2007? Genuine question, I don't know. But we did it first. is not a justification for taxing the base input that we need to keep our homes heated, that we need to produce anything, that we need to use to move our cars. It doesn't make any sense. Oh, we did it first, guys. Don't worry. Carbon taxes, smartman taxes. Everything's fine. Just pay your carbon taxes and we'll get a pipeline in the future. Yeah, I've heard that one before, Danielle Smith. Nope. And here's Rupa celebrating. She says the Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, is someone who's fought harder for Alberta and its energy ambitions more than anyone else in recent memory. She calls the Memorandum of Understanding a massive win for Alberta and Canada. I'm sure she does. Pierre Poilievre says it's a pipe dream. Is he therefore implying Smith doesn't know what she's doing and was sold a bill of goods by Carney? The scenario is hard to credit. And yeah, well, they're all playing a role. Danielle Smith's role is to be the optimistic person who's going to get this thing across the finish line, blah, 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 blah. We can't leave Canada, not when we're about to get this pipeline, everybody in Alberta. But I think everybody in Alberta sees through this. And the Today Show was maybe going to be called Pipe Dream, but we had to talk about Carney and his greenwashing or green de-risking. But fundamentally, I don't think this pipeline is ever going to see the light of day. And it's being used to implement a carbon tax in Alberta, and Danielle Smith is playing her role to move that agenda forward. And I hope I'm wrong, but there we are. So that's what I think is going on. Kim says this is an excellent article by Jack Mintz about how the new Memorandum of Understanding agreed to between Alberta and the federal government. I commend Danielle Smith for fighting hard for Alberta. However, I am very concerned about the conditions attached for a pipeline to get built. Obviously, Dr. Mintz is as well. I also find the speaking point by Carney wholly illustrative. He says the MOU creates necessary conditions but not sufficient conditions for a pipeline project to move forward. So he has a word salad to provide him the necessary fodder to say in the future, when the pipeline project is ultimately canceled for lack of support, that he had provided warnings years earlier. Beautiful politics. So yeah, we're getting screwed one way or the other. Up or down, we're getting screwed. That's how this is coming out. Ryan Garrettson says Carney is using his position to make himself and his friends rich under the guise of this climate scam. I can't believe so many Canadians just can't see what's happening before their very eyes. And when called out for it, it's of course a conspiracy theory. So people are asking questions and the questions are being answered with, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. Stop being such a conspiracy theorist. Which when I was getting my YouTube channel canceled and saying don't listen to people who tell you that this is safe and effective or it's fully tested and things like that. They have not had time to fully test these things and so on and so forth. I was called a conspiracy theorist and worse. And so it's interesting, right? This language to shut people down from having questions about things that seem weird is expanding. It's happening in other places too, even the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, it is being reported that the government's MOU with Alberta includes a multi-billion-dollar investment in carbon capture with Pathways Alliance, the premier carbon capture company connected with Pathways Alliance is none other than Entropy, which is owned by none other than Brookfield. Is the reason it has taken the government so long to get a deal with Alberta because the Prime Minister has been busy getting a deal for Brookfield?
Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, I hate to break up their conspiracy theory, but Pathways is actually owned by 6 large oil companies, not Entropy.
Member for St. Albert, Sturgeon River.
Mr. Speaker, the very Brookfield fund that the Prime Minister stands to make millions of dollars in future bonus pay invested $300 million in Entropy. So, in the face of that, can the government provide the assurance that the deal negotiated by the Prime Minister will in no way benefit Entropy and, by extension, the Prime Minister's financial portfolio?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, here we go again, conspiracy theory. We're focused on building Canada. We're focused on working with Alberta to grow our natural resources in a responsible way in consultation with First Nations. That's how we build, not conspiracy theory.
Right. And how do you shut people down talking about things that are inconvenient or uncomfortable for you, like ties the prime minister has to Brookfield, and is he enriching himself through his ties to this company that he used to be a CEO of? And they say conspiracy theory, conspiracy theory. Reminds me of Gladiator, Commodus talking with the senators, right? So pretty wild stuff going on there. This, jaw-dropping. Go watch this. Go watch this right meow.
And now comes the magic. They used the Canadian Growth Fund to de-risk the entire project on a contract for 15 years on a guarantee for $16 million a year and $200 million up front. That means all liability, all debt, and all carrying right to the finish line is taken on by the Canadian taxpayer. So we would support the project right to the end, be at a net loss as the completed project belongs to a foreign entity who collects all of the profits and reaps all of the rewards. If you didn't think that was bad enough, here is the nuke. When a government contract de-risks the investment, it is legally binded and can be front-loaded immediately, which means that 15-year valuation that is down the road occurs instantaneously, jumps the hurdle, and the 20% kicks in immediately. So not only are we at a net loss, the project will be foreign owned, and we have debt for the next 15 years, and Carney gets paid immediately. Do you have any idea what the 20% payout plus management fee, even after you pay the other managers and the dividends are separated, just for Mark Carney? If he is able to de-risk the entire platform, and he's doing it right in front of your eyes, we are de-risking the UAE commitments, and the UAE has the contract with the Catalyst Transition Fund that he also managed. The maximum dollar amount is between $750 million to $1.2 billion. If you didn't notice immediately after the budget was passed, all of these commitments start rolling in because they're all being de-risked. And the incredible part is this. He took your pension money, because you can't take tax money, it's not there, there's no pile of cash. Put it in a fund to attract other investors. It is a perfect circle, a snake eating its tail. And at the end of it, there's a net loss. We don't own the product, we don't own the profits. We'll get a little bit of tax and maybe some jobs. And Mark Carney will be a billionaire.
Go watch the rest of this. You'll feel even more dirty at the end, right? Like, I can't get it off. I can't get it off. So that's not so good, right? Super not so good. Cat Canada says major Liberal breach of ethics. Shocking. I'm shocked. This is me being shocked. Carney can't have any contact with Brookfield, but he met with them behind closed doors anyway. Mark Carney and Brookfield stand to gain millions from liberal policies. Yeah, so this is a problem. I'm sure this is another conspiracy theory.
Despite the conflict of interest and ethics screen he has on Brookfield, we found out this week that the Prime Minister met with Brookfield executives behind closed doors in his office in October, proving that his ethics screen is more like a smoke screen. The Prime Minister and Brookfield stand to gain millions from his policies. He knows he can't have any contact with Brookfield, but he met with them anyways. Why would he meet with Brookfield knowing he's barred from having any contact with them?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Labour.
Speaker, the Prime Minister in a few minutes will be doing his job. He'll be standing up for steel workers. Every project, every infrastructure project in this country depends on one thing, Mr. Speaker, Canadian steel, strong Canadian steels, and the workers who produce it, Mr. Speaker.
Despite the conflict of interest and...
That was a pivot. Okay. That's I don't want to talk about this. He's fighting for Canadians and stuff, right? That's what they do, pivot. Andrew Scheer, the guy who was hiding behind the curtains to make sure that the Liberals' budget passed, that guy, remember him? I remember him. Remember when Jagmeet Singh used to pretend to fight the Liberals but would support them in the House of Commons every chance he got? Reminds me of Andrew Scheer. Andrew Scheer says, steel workers laid off, auto plants shuttered, softwood mills closed. Mark Carney promised to deliver a win by July on tariffs. When asked about his failure, he said, who cares? Conservatives care. Do they, though? Some conservatives might care. Some conservative MPs might care. I might believe that, maybe-ish, right? But I'd be hard-pressed to. They seem to behave in a way that says that they don't actually care. Desiree says Mark Carney isn't telling the truth. She's responding to Mark Carney, who says, Premier Danielle Smith and I have agreed to a framework built on shared ambitions to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. So we just kicked the can down the road. You understand this, right? It's not 2030 anymore. It's 2050. So we got, 25 more years or whatever of this nonsense. we should abandon net zero. Danielle Smith shouldn't be fighting for net zero 2050. She should be fighting for, this is a stupid idea with stupid policies that are stupid, and these things make us poorer. Okay, so it's not so good. That it's not so good that Danielle Smith is fighting for 2050. Unlock the full potential of Alberta's energy and resources and build a stronger, more sustainable, more competitive economy. Here's what we want to achieve together, he says. And Desiree says, Mark Carney isn't telling the truth. There is no growth under net zero. How could there be when the government is seizing control of your natural resources? I've worked with Carney's Circle. I've been inside the WEF system. Net zero delivers higher prices, unstable grids, and investment fleeing Canada. There's no climate emergency, just a multi-trillion-dollar control regime. Just name one country that got rich under net zero. There aren't any, of course not, because net zero prevents you from developing your resources to a degree that is, you will remain poor. And everything that gets built goes through the government, and it's all kickbacks built, right? It's like SNC-Lavalin, right? If you don't have enough to buy a yacht for the MP or one of bureaucrats under the MP, then this thing's not moving forward. Sorry, right? And that's third world politics, man. This is an interesting thing. Ian goes through ownership. Man, I've got to say goodbye to the stream. I didn't think that we were at 26 minutes. I thought 19 minutes for sure. But here we are, 26 minutes. Check this out by Ian Carroll. He's underlining who owns what. And basically the white is, I'll tell you this and then I'll let the stream go. The white is owned by people like you and me. And the other colors are BlackRock, Vanguard, and often it's BlackRock and Vanguard and a bunch of other companies, 5 or 6 other companies that are prolific on everything else. They own everything, and they own everything with these other companies, right? Think Vanguard and BlackRock and whatever. They merge together by their ownership of everything together to become this one mega corporation that owns everything. And so Ian went through and put all the companies onto this little chart, and he simplified the chart. So like the red and the green signify different companies, but really they're all just one company. It's a mega company that owns everything, BlackRock and Vanguard and all of these things. The companies that are not owned by these entities are white, okay? And so he goes through, and then there's some other muddy aspects to it, and he colors them gray. But basically this, which is mostly black, this is the BlackRock entity, but it's not BlackRock. It's a bigger entity than BlackRock that owns Vanguard too and BlackRock and everything else underneath it. BlackRock owns everything except the white and gray squares, and BlackRock owns some of the gray squares, and I guess none of the white squares. But that's how bad this is. That's how bad we as a society have sold out the ownership of everything. If you try and tell Disney, men can't be women, Disney, this is what you're up against, because everybody on this black thing here will uphold what they're told. There was no cornucopia on the Fruit of the Loom, right? Like they will do and say what they're told to do and say, because otherwise the money stops flowing, and they're not going to tell you they're doing it. I asked Shopify multiple times, can you confirm that there is no government entity or anybody else from law enforcement telling you to censor or limit the reach of my show? And they will not answer that question. They will not answer it. I was like, okay, great, thank you. They're very, very good support. I really appreciate Spotify support. They're way better than Google, way better than YouTube, way better than like anything else, really. And so they've answered all my questions except that one. And like, I go back and forth with them. I've asked them a couple of times in different ways. They will pointedly not answer it. And that I take as an answer. Anyway, with that, we've got to say goodbye to the stream. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you want the whole show, head over to Canada.